And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to do some inward reflection, some insights and wisdom from the local players, our leaders who've braved, who've been resilient in some very challenging times. But now let's look towards them. There is, of course, that vision, and that shared value can be seen in how Pakistan's mineral deposit can be a game changer for Pakistan and the region and the world. But more importantly, a number of times Pakistan is branded to be a place where there is high risk and high gains. Unfortunately, in the recent times, those high gains have also been very dwindling. So let's look at what keeps the businesses afloat, what gives them optimism, and how are the numbers looking? Again, borrowing from a phrase used earlier, from the macro indicators coming down to the micro emotions. Ladies and gentlemen, this panel will be focusing on developing mineral sector in the local business environment. What are some of the pros and cons, some strengths and weaknesses, and more importantly, some opportunities and challenges as in right now in 2023, but what is the next decade looking like? Some leaders who've led some robust teams have diversified and have been in the business for very long. I'm sure that their wisdom will add much value. Please join me in welcoming the moderator for this session, Managing Director GHPL, Mr. Masood Nabi. Masood Saab, I'll be handing over your panel to you soon. May I request you to please take your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, joining this eminent panel, first and foremost, we have the Chief Executive Officer of the 4G Foundation. Please welcome Mr. Waqar Ahmed Malik. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming President Engro Corporation, Mr. Ghayas Khan. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Chief Executive Officer, Lucky Cement and the YBG Group, Mr. Muhammad Ali Tabba. May I request the organizers to please add in a chair? We'll need we need a setup of 9 and we have 3 and 7. We'll need about 2 more chairs, or if I may request the moderator to take the podium. Yeah, we'll need 1 more chair. If I may request the organizers to please add that. You can take my sofa if you'd like. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Chairman of the Arif Habib Corporation, Mr. Arif Habib. He too will be joining us shortly. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, a leading entrepreneur, someone we see as a force to reckon with in the Pakistan industry and business. Please welcome Dr. Zilaf Munir. Do we have somebody from the housekeeping team here? We'd like to add 1 more sofa to the panel, please. He's bringing that. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President and CEO of Hilton Pharma, Mr. Shehbaz Yasin Malik. Ladies and gentlemen, President, Overseas Investors Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Amir Paracha. Masood Saab, if I may request you to please join me up on the podium. Amir, you may take this first chair. If I can just request, yeah, it's done. Last but definitely not the least, may I request Mr. Fahim Haider, Managing Director, Barrick Petroleum Company, to please join us up on stage. On a lighter note, Sara maslai kursi ka hai, so Since everybody now has a chair, may I now hand it over to you, sir?
Thank you, Sidra. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, distinguished guests. I am Masood Nabi, the CEO of Government Holdings Private Limited. I also head Pakistan Minerals Private Limited, which is a joint venture of OGDC, GHPL, and Pakistan Petroleum. This company is Barrick's partner in the Reko project, along with the government of Balochistan. It is my honor to be here today to moderate this valuable discussion on developing mineral sector in the local business environment. We have a great panel with us comprising key figures of Pakistan's local business community, and I extend a warm welcome to all of the distinguished guests over here. They are all such well-known figures that they don't need an introduction. Pakistan's mineral sector holds incredible potential waiting to be tapped. Our nation is abundant with reserves of critical minerals integral to the world's accelerated drive towards adopting climate-friendly technologies. In our drive toward becoming a key player in the global minerals landscape, local businesses will play a pivotal role. This discussion today aims to highlight the opportunities for local businesses when stepping into the mining sector. I want to build a little bit on our earlier sessions. Certain themes emerged from those sessions. One is we need to ensure that the discovery of natural resources translates into higher economic growth and human development. There have been parts of the world where there may have been GDP growth, but the human development side was missing. So we have to make sure that happens. Our conversation this afternoon will build on those earlier discussions in which the importance of linkages between mining and the rest of the economy were emphasized. Some of the themes which were discussed earlier were ease of regulatory regime, development of industry clusters, value addition, enhanced investments, infrastructure growth, and capacity building. With that, I would like us to delve into this exciting conversation. The format of this session will be a little different from the previous sessions because we have a very large and distinguished panel. So what I would request is that each participant keep their remarks to 4 to 5 minutes so that we can have one round in which I will be posing a specific question to every panelist, and after that perhaps we can have, time permitting, another round of comments and perhaps a little bit of discussion between the panelists. I would like to begin with Waqar Saab. My question for you is, how do you see the mining sector evolving in Pakistan for social economic development given the overall global context and its constraints? So Waqar Saab, please.
Thank you, Masood. So here is what it is. I'll start from the global scene. Not audible? Is that better?
Yeah, much better, Ji.
Yes. Better. Okay. So we are now about 8 billion of us on the globe, and 1 billion people came out of poverty, from the poverty line in China. There are still about 1 billion people out there who live below the poverty line. Now, if you kind of zoom into Pakistan, we are 240 million people. There are swaths of areas in Pakistan where people are below the poverty line, or their areas are not well developed as we have in other provinces. So, overall, globally and in Pakistan, the demographics, the migration, the urbanization, and those things will eventually decide the political and the economic conditions of each country, and also their relations with other countries. Now, we have an opportunity here to socially uplift people who are left behind. And mining offers us an opportunity because mining and some of the things that we have seen, gold and copper, is of global relevance on the global scene. Why do I say that? Because look at Chile. It is probably about 20 to 25% world's production. And if you look at our reserves today, you could be creating another Chile here in this region. So imagine what it could unlock. Now, what is mining? Mining is like a marathon. It's not like putting up an industry. It takes about 20 to 25 years to do a cycle. Now, imagine if you were to doing a marathon, you would need to know to complete it successfully that your track is de-risked. And how do you do that? It's a beautiful concept, and you have to embrace the value of inclusivity. So look, I take Balochistan, whom does this mineral belong to? It's really the people. If we get this concept right, what they're doing is they're giving you their endowment. Okay, come and develop this endowment. You take something, but there has to be something back to us. And I think that is the right way, the public-private partnership. That must be embraced. If you do that, you would require infrastructure, you would require roads, rail links, you would require energy infrastructure, you would require water infrastructure. What does that do? Who is going to build that? We must take the local people in. We must train them, vocational training centers. We would need an army of geological engineers. And I think this is the time where the investment needs to go and involve the local people. If we get this right, it could be a game changer forever for Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you, Waqar Saab. You touched very key points, inclusiveness, importance of engaging with the community, and it's very important to think of this in the long term. It's a marathon, and the path has to...
If I just want to
Yes,
add some of the good models that we have already built in this country. For example, we do coring at a bigger level in a very remote location. It takes about 3, 4, 5 kilometers to do the quarry and bring the thing in. What we are doing in that remote area, we are providing employment to the local people. We are solarizing their houses. We're bringing water there. We're bringing to get their livestock starting. From my group, we spent about $34 million just to do this across the group. In the last 3 years, that's about 10 billion rupees we have spent on such activities. Then there is another beautiful project, which is SECMEC. I had the privilege to serve Angro's board previously, and I think you have a public-private partnership there, which is really, you don't need to, it's just emulate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Waqar Saab. You mentioned Angro, so we'll go to Ghayas Saab next. Ghayas Saab, your company has been involved with the Thar mining project, and I'm sure there are very valuable lessons that you've learned that you can share with the audience. So I will ask you, what advice do you have for people involved, who are involved or getting involved in the mineral sector, keeping in view your experience with Thar? And if you can in particular hit on the community inclusiveness aspect, that would be very valuable.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this very important summit. It has been very inspiring to hear all the speakers in the morning and even now. Before I sort of go on to the point about what little we can share from our experience in Thar with the wider mineral mining sector, I just want to touch upon something you said in the beginning about the economic impact. So typically, when you're undertaking mining in any country, at the start, it always seems like a very daunting task. There is skepticism, there is lack of belief, but the good thing is that because of the Thar example, we can actually see the economic impact of it setting in. So 2007 is the time when this project was conceived. If I fast forward to 2023, Thar is producing about 10% of the country's power, and it's saving about $1 billion of foreign exchange every year. Now, I know this is a forward-looking summit, but just for a minute or two, I will kind of look back on what could have been. So in the mid-90s, there was an attempt made to produce power from Thar coal, which kind of didn't work out. If Thar coal had been used for power at that time, then it would have replaced all the furnace oil power plants, all the imported coal power plants, all the LNG power plants. And we would have been saving about $4 billion a year in foreign exchange today. If we go back to the first attempt of Reko Diq, and from what I know, that the ultimate size of export from the first phase, I believe, which we are here to in many ways celebrate, is going to be about $3.5 to $4 billion. Now you add the $4 billion a year saved because of Thar coal to $4 billion that you could have made because of the mineral export, and you come to a number of $8 billion. Your current account deficit for the last 10 years on average has been $5 to $6 billion. I'm not talking about an agriculture revolution, an IT revolution, expansion of mineral mining. I'm talking about two initiatives. These two initiatives would have led to a situation where you would not have had the current account deficit, meaning your currency would have been stronger, your inflation would have been lower, your interest rates to correct the inflation would have been much lower, your cost of business would have been lower, you would have had more investments, those investments would have led to more employment, employment would have led to prosperity. So you can actually connect the dots from these two mining initiatives to the prosperity of the nation. I am not talking about any expansion, I'm only talking about these two things. So the question then becomes that what are the learnings and how was the Thar dream realized, and what were some of the things that stand out? It started off on the initiative of the government of Sindh, and credit is due there. And they believed that a model of public-private partnership was most suited for it. And that's why the partnership between Engro and government of Sindh took place. But then there's a lot more that happened later on, right? When government of Sindh took this project to, and I'll speak openly, their political opponents, which was the Mian Nawaz Sharif-led PMLN government, they were treated with open arms. The People's Party Government of Sindh-led project was included in the CPEC framework. It was provided the sovereign guarantee. And I think if you Google search January 31st, 2014, at the time when this project was inaugurated, you will see Mian Nawaz Sharif standing with Mr. Asif Ali Zardari doing the opening for the Thar project. Later on, even from other state institutions, General Bajwa has visited Thar many times. Army has provided the security network. Organizations like Indus Hospital, like TCF, have been at the forefront. And as Waqar Saab very beautifully said, that this is a marathon. You had a set of shareholders who put in patient capital. Whether it was Engro, whether it was Hupco, House of Habib, Lucky Group, Liberty. There are many, Habib Bank, many business groups who put in that money. 2007 is when this project was conceived and started development, and only recently the company gave its first dividend. That is what it takes. These are the kind of projects which change the fate of countries, and they transcend politics. They transcend bureaucratic delays of what is what is under the province, what is under the federal government. They are way beyond drawing room conversations that what is the role of state institutions and such. We have to think beyond it. And I'm very glad to see, especially Dr. Saab, aapki speech maybe, the way we are thinking about developing the mineral mining sector is actually keeping all of this in perspective, and it's good to see. And you've got the example of Thar in front of you. Just last comment, I know I'm probably exceeding my time. What would be really good to see is that presence of Pakistani private sector in mineral mining as well. Because please do keep in mind that with the stewardship of the federal and provincial government, it was the private sector which led Thar's development. Up until now, what we've seen is government-owned organizations, but I really hope that a framework is developed which encourages the local investors to also come forward in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Riaz Saab. You hit on some very important themes and messages. I mean, it's worth noting that the impact of just a couple of projects, how large can it be? And it can really change the financial outlook of Pakistan. And, and the other theme which I think is very important is that ease of doing business, that projects move as fast as they can, and there are no unnecessary delays. You mentioned, we talked a little bit about the financial aspects and about the role or possible role of the private sector. With that, I would like to go to Tabba Saab. Tabba Saab, could you provide us some insights into how private investors perceive the growth potential of Pakistan's mining sector, opportunities that the private sector may be interested in looking at, has looked at?
Sure, thank you. I just want to start by saying that 5 years ago, a group of business houses in Pakistan came together and we formed a company called National Resources Limited. The idea was at that time, that the government of Pakistan got this award of $9 billion penalty, from international courts, and that was a big issue, how to settle that. So NRL, and some of the members are already on this podium, which really worked very hard, on the ground level, engaged Antofagasta and Barrick Gold at that time. And we made the entire process, in a way that we made it easier for the government of Pakistan to come and make the deal and settle this issue with Antofagasta. So I think it was not mentioned in this forum, but I think it was a very important role that the private sector played, in resolving this $9 billion penalty. So it's not that it was being done by the government. A private sector-led role was very, very important. The reason we stepped into it, because we saw a great opportunity in the mining sector in Pakistan. It's not been developed, and it's a long way, for the development of mining industry in Pakistan. And Chagi district, which is in Balochistan, has a great potential for mining in copper, gold, and other mineral resources. I would compare this, because the reason I always compare Pakistan mining potential with DRC Congo, because we have a cement factory and I visit Congo a lot, and I got that mining aspiration from Congo actually. That area in Katanga, which produces around 1 million tons of copper and cobalt, and Barrick also operates a very large mine in eastern Congo for the gold. So it's actually the private sector, as we see, the theme is, from dust to development. Without the private sector, this theme is not complete. So private sector has a great and a pivotal role to play in the development in the wine industry. And the reason I say is that we really need to engage the private sector. Private sector is the one who stays in the country. When they invest capital in the country, the return stays in the country. It doesn't flow out of the country as dividends. So all that capital or profits that are generated, by the private sector is all being deployed again in Pakistan. And the reason it's also important is that we also can help government to form right policies. Again, a country which is such rich in resource, which I talked about, Congo. Even today, half of the population lives below $100. The reason being is, that when you form these policy in hurry, you kind of try not to capture all those points, which should be beneficial for the country. And unless you don't convert this mines and minerals into value addition, which our minister mentioned in the morning, that if you're going to export your slurry, from Balochistan out of Gwadar and not convert that into copper or gold, or you don't deploy the smelting capability in Pakistan, is going to be wasting our resource. So what really government really has to think about it, that not a single raw material should be exported out of Pakistan. Anything that has to go out of Pakistan has to be converted into value addition. And unless we don't realize this, and after 5 years, we will realize, why didn't we capture this in the earlier policy? I think it'll be too late, because you cannot change the policy, while the investor is already engaged. Yeah. All these things has to be done before the investors, are given license to explore or do the mining. So, and the reason I say, as Gaz also said, the public-private partnership is also very, very important for the development, or not just mining sector in Pakistan, for any large business, which deploys over a couple of billions or, in the tune of $5 to $10 billion. It is important that, big business houses come together. So we pull in capital, we pull in the talent, and we pull in the brains, and the minds, so we can do the project and execute the project in a correct way. So it's a long way for Pakistan. I think private sector is a very vibrant in Pakistan, despite all the challenges, which we have faced in this country. Not only that we are progressing, but also, all these large corporate houses and business houses are also profitable, And if you are profitable, then you can deploy capital. If you don't make profit, you don't have that capability and capacity to do large projects. And some of the people, even on this podium, have done billion-dollar plus project in Pakistan, raising capital, through their own means, through their own relationship. And this is possible. It's not that Pakistan doesn't have the capacity or private sector doesn't have the capacity. It's just that the government has to put trust in the private sector, and they have to take us along in the development of this development of development, which is very important and critical for Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Tabba Saab. You hit on several important points. I'll just mention some of them. The importance of the private sector. In any economy, most of the jobs are created by the private sector, not the government. So we appreciate the role of the private sector. The concept of value addition, cluster development, it is a priority for the government as well. Value addition, capacity building, all very important. Financing is a very important element as well. You mentioned that private groups have been able to raise substantial amount of financing. And on the topic of financing, I would like to turn to Arif Habib Saab, who's one of the most prominent figures in Pakistan's financial markets. Arif Saab, what role can capital markets play in financing new ventures in the country?
Thank you, Masood Dabi Saab. Before I give the specific answer about the role of capital market, I would endorse what Muhammad Ali has said. In fact, we were part of this NRL, and in fact, NRL, there were 5 groups were associated with that: Lucky, Liberty, Mari Petroleum, Fatma, and Arif Habib. And we, in fact, contributed in bringing the parties on table for a negotiated settlement. And I think that was a beginning where I think Antofagasta was paid out, and the Barrick, in fact, decided to come back. And initially, you see, along with the Barrick Gold and the government of Balochistan, this NRL was supposed to be their partner into that. The benefit which in fact we were looking by including private sector was in fact working with the major partner with them for their right investment strategy and right structure, financial structure of that. But unfortunately that in fact ultimately didn't materialize, but we are very happy that this has been resolved and now the project is on track. You see, I also must appreciate here the commitment of all the stakeholders. You see, the government, the finance ministry, the establishment, and all other stakeholders, they were very much committed. And because of their commitment, we in fact have reached to this stage that now Barrick Gold is now starting work on this mine. And similarly, you see in the case of Thar, initially the provincial government, Sindh and the Angro, they got together, and then subsequently they brought other private sector groups with them. And that, I think, all the groups, when we were working on this recording, and in Thar, all the big groups were interested in making investment in to these ventures. So there is a lot of appetite and interest in mining sector here in Pakistan. And you see that all these groups and corporations, most of them are listed at the stock exchange. Yes. It means they have the general public stake as well with them. So whenever in fact these companies would come to the stock exchange for raising capital, I believe that would be an overwhelming response to them, not only from these large groups, but from the funds, from foreign portfolio investors as well, because we don't have much listed on the stock exchange in this sector. So general public would also be, I think, interested in having a stake in these ventures, because the projections which we in fact were having in that and the financial structure, and we were also in fact was proposing to get the company listed, because the benefit of getting company listed, that make that investment and security bankable, and the transparency also is ensured in that. So the capital market will definitely, and in the recent period, there is a system of book building in public offerings. That also would also contribute very positively for the contribution of capital market in setting up this mining companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Arif Habib Saab. We hope that you can leverage your previous experience into more opportunities. There are plenty of opportunities that we spoke about earlier in the day, and we hope that groups like yours, Tabba Saab's group, and others can, Mari as well, Fauji, everybody can get into opportunities over here alongside, perhaps just domestic companies or in partnership with international companies. Thank you very much, Arif Habib Saab. Question for Dr. Zilaf. You're the CEO of English Biscuits, one of the largest private companies. The development of mining will enable business opportunities. Mining will grow our infrastructure, ports, shipping, railways. There'll be cluster development. There'll be skilled consumers from these mining ventures who are customers. What business opportunities do you see for someone who's not necessarily in the mining business right now?
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everybody. I would first and foremost like to thank the organizers for having all of us here. And in particular, I would like to thank Barrick and Asfar and Ali for creating this platform and forum for all of us to be coming together. And actually, we had an extremely inspiring sessions since the morning, and all of us feel, so we are talking about from dust to development. And if we really look about what we've been talking about since this morning, we've been talking about nation building, because that is what it entails if we really fulfill the promise of what we have been hearing since this morning. So if I look at it from the perspective of a business, that what you would be referring to is how do businesses grow in an environment. Just a very simple example, if I take my own business as example. So if we are in the business where we are selling SKUs of 25 and 50 rupees and selling 100 billion of that in an environment, and we've doubled the business, been able to double the business in the very challenging environments of the past 3 years. And if I take what we have been told and shared since the morning, and if this is a $7 trillion potential that we have, that we are sitting on, what does that mean for businesses all across the country? What does it mean for businesses of all nature? So that is the avenues when there is business development, which the value chain, down the value chain, it increases. So whatever you can touch or see around you, it's either grown or it is mined. I relate to the grown aspect, which is the agriculture side, which I'm more familiar with. So it's from farm to fork, all across the value chain, whether it is from the farmers to the suppliers to the logistics, to the manufacturing, to the engineering, to the distribution, to the customer, most importantly, the customer. So what has been my learning that I can apply to from that side to the growing of the business value chain in mining? So where we heard in the morning about whether the downstream, what the examples of what the downstream businesses have been doing, but I think even more importantly, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is transportation, whether it is IT, most importantly, whether it is human skill development. These, if done consistently and seriously with a long-term policy, can be leapfrogging all of those. And that is, I think, what is an important point to be taking home when we talk about everybody coming together through this one window operation, trying to achieve the same goal. The first, and we are hearing from the private sector here, all of us sitting here, talking about the challenges that have been faced. So it is also a time to be looking at not what the last 70 years, as we spoke about this morning as well. It's 70 years that the country could have been doing much better in, but to make the next 70 years different, what are the learnings from all that we have been talking about since this morning? I mean, whether we just heard about the experiences of a few of the businesses here. If we even look at energy, and if we look at the circular debt, we look at where does all of that begin from? It comes from the point of short-termism, So what it requires is a longer-term view, a longer-term policy, consistency in what is happening, and giving the opportunity, the trust, and fulfilling the promise like we do with our brands to your consumer. So the opportunities are immense, and we have nothing but positivity towards the unlocking of the potential that is out there. How that happens will have to be a partnership between the private and the public sectors, and what it should lead to is development of the communities, development of the Human Development Index, inclusivity, and across the board examples being shared of what it can and has led to. So if you look at global examples, it again goes both ways. Chile, when I was speaking to the gentleman from Barrick, Chile was an example of how it is one of those countries where they have been able to, with the mining industry, prosper, right? So there are examples that go the other way too. But so in the end, it's a matter of, it's in our hands whether it can go from exploitation to total transformation. And that's what I think all of us here are about. And I think there is enough potential in this industry and in this country that we can make this into a success story.
Thank you, Dr. Zilaf. Our potential is immense, our resources are immense. We just have to do things in the right way. And we hope that by doing things the right way, we'll be able to accelerate our economic growth and achieve our human development objectives.
Yes, and the devil will be in the detail, because as was also mentioned, it's about, so when you're talking about foreign investment, which is exactly what we need, but looking into what is going to be happening with your outflows and what is going to be happening 20 years hence or 30 years hence, which is the job of the people who are sitting there making these plans to be looking at and doing now to make sure that in the end it is about nation building.
Thank you, madam. I want to talk a little bit more about how the private sector will be looking at opportunities. So I will turn to Shahbaz Malik Saab as a businessman and as someone who is in multiple areas. What are your major considerations? What are the major considerations you would consider when assessing the potential of going into a new sector such as mining?
Assalamu alaikum. So, Mr. Saab, thank you so much. तो बहुत मसला ये होता है आखिरी सवाल जब आता है ना तो बहुत सारे बात लोग कह चुके होते हैं, so it's very difficult to add on to it. Having said that, the first word is learning. For Pakistan entrepreneur, a new dimension has just been added, which we simply cannot ignore: mining. It will give us an opportunity to work in services areas as an infrastructure support function, which we can provide in the beginning. But going forward, let me give you an example of our experience. I come from pharmaceutical industry. So 30 years ago, 80% of the Pakistan pharmaceutical share was held by multinationals. Today, 80% is held by local companies. So down the line, in coming years, we as entrepreneurs will learn and will also become world mining companies in time to come. And there's no stopping because we have got our presence on the ground. So that is what the vision is. In the shorter run, of course, there will be several opportunities in the service areas, in the infrastructure support areas, so which will come. One more addition which I would like to suggest to our policymakers is that we need to develop our human resource, which Barrick has, Mark mentioned in his opening speech, that there are a lot of exchange programs which they're going to do by sending personnel to different locations, especially students. But I would say there should be a special contact with our universities, and they should develop special programs, special degrees, special courses in mining sector. And there should be exchange programs for our students who can go and work into the areas, and then we'll have cross-pollination. So these are the few words in which I will say that I see those as an opportunity, not for only as an entrepreneur, but for the business community and for Pakistan at large. Thank you.
Shahbaz Saab, thank you very much. I will now, I would like to get a little bit of insight on how international companies, the experience of international companies in Pakistan. Paracha Saab, since you represent the Overseas Chamber, how should international companies be looking at investment prospects in Pakistan, and what makes Pakistan an attractive destination for them?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I was asked to basically tell why Pakistan and why foreign investment should be looking at coming to Pakistan. Let me share a bit of statistics, because I'm going to be speaking from the platform of Overseas Chamber. So Overseas Chamber has around 209 companies across 14 different sectors from 35 different countries, generated around $60 billion of gross revenue last year alone. Out of these 209 companies, 50 companies are Fortune 500 companies that are already operating in Pakistan, and 55 of these companies are actually listed on Pakistan Stock Exchange. So you can imagine that already there are a lot of foreign investors actually operating and investing in Pakistan. Now, as we all know that foreign direct investment is very important, critical for Pakistan in order to lift from the current economic crisis. And Overseas Chamber is considered to be the first port of call when it comes to the foreign direct investment in Pakistan. Now, just to basically give you a statistic that in the last 10 years, these 209 companies have actually invested more than $22 billion in Pakistan alone, which actually is more than the FDI that actually has come in outside Overseas Chamber. So you can imagine that the confidence the companies are already showing into the country is a lot more than any other outsider are actually showing. What is also basically important to share is that not only this, these foreign investors are actually contributing 1/3 to the government exchequer. So last year, the government collected around 6 trillion rupees, out of which 2 trillion rupees of taxes were only contributed by the overseas investment companies. And I think so these statistics are good enough to give confidence to any new investor looking at Pakistan that why they should actually come and invest into this country, because they're already very, very successful stories. There are companies which actually are as old as the country itself, who actually started investing since 1947. I think so what's one area which we have been talking about since morning is that one area we have always discussed that we really need to improve and work upon ease on doing business. And I think so with this introduction of a Special Investment Facilitation Council, I'm quite hopeful that this single window operation is going to make investment very easy for the foreign investors to come and actually operate with ease into this country. And lastly, I think so, Tabbas has talked about and Riaz has talked about is the involvement of private sector into all these new initiatives. We know the story from our neighboring country in 1991. And what actually was the one stroke that really worked for them? They liberalized their economy. They made private sector to actually play a very, very active role in really lifting the economy. I think this is one missing piece that really need to basically work on this. There are a lot of government officials sitting here And I think so this is one area I would like them to actually focus. And I think so one last thing, this is a country which gives unrestricted ownership. It gives, allows foreign hiring. It allows unrestricted repatriation of funds. There's no minimum capital requirement. It has double tax treaty with over 64 countries in the world. It has significant skilled labor. We already talked a lot about what's the size of prize when it comes to minerals, which is 6 trillion. And I think so the huge youth bulge. So when you come to this country, please do invest from the long-term perspective. It definitely pays off, and it pays off big.
Thank you so much, Paracha Saab. I think it's very important for international companies to know that all other international companies have been working in Pakistan for over 70 years, and they have thrived. And there are various protections which have been available to them. And now the environment is even better with recently enacted policies and frameworks. So thank you very much, Paracha Saab. Last but not least, Fahim Saab, we are almost out of time, I'm told. But your views, what is the oil and gas company doing in mining, and what sort of inspired Mari's diversification into the mining sector? And I know we are in mining as well, so.
Thank you, Mr. Saab. Being part of this panel, feeling very privileged. So, I think E&P companies all over the world are moving towards energy transition. And MPCL, Mari Petroleum being no different. We also want to be part of this energy transition. We want to contribute towards the climate change and reduction of carbon emissions. We feel that the world would need cleaner energy and greener vehicles to meet the targets of net zero by 2050. And the minerals like lithium and copper and nickel are going to be essential to meet those targets, because most of the clean energy technologies like wind turbines, like transmission systems, as well as electric vehicles, all of them require these minerals. Their demand is on the rise, their supply is limited, and I think that creates an opportunity for us to look at diversifying into mining. Why in Pakistan we think we are best placed to do that? We have transferable skills in the E&P sector, which we can easily translate into develop the mining sector here in Pakistan. We feel that we are best placed because of our experience, our know-how, our presence in Balochistan, and our technical skills, and the strong balance sheet to be able to contribute to the development of mining in Pakistan. We want to be the partners of choice for the international investors because of all these reasons I have just described, as far as they are serious and committed towards the technology transfer and the development of local expertise in the country. Last but not least, mining projects fit very well once they are successfully developed because they provide a long-term returns. They fit very well with the social agenda of our sponsors and shareholders. And this is another driver which is contributing to our decision to look into mining. Thank you.
Thank you, Fahim Saab. It's a very important point that you said that for oil and gas companies, energy transition is a very important part of their strategy. And mining, because of critical minerals involved in energy transition, it is a possible fit for oil and gas companies, and especially given the growth opportunities in Pakistan. I'm told that we are, Sidra, do we have a little bit of time? We don't have time. It would have been great to have another round, but we are out of time. But if anyone wants to make some very quick remarks.
Just one observation, I'm thankful the minister is here. In fact, he stole the show this morning. So we just had to be additive to what you said. But there is one aspect which I think the point was very well made, and I'm a vociferous supporter where private sector must come in, because it's the private sector that's going to hold the hand of the foreign investor, and that will be the real partnership. But more importantly is this point. So if you take RECO, $5 to $6 billion project, if you take the funding that is required, just to give you a scale and sense of what the funding needs to be, it will be north of about $3 to $4 billion. Okay, if not 4, then at least $3 billion. Now, to do a $3 billion is not, you don't have the capacity locally because you have to pay what you import. And therefore, it's very important that we start planning how do we tap bringing funding in. And funding will not be easy for us. To me, that looks a big challenge. So to me, that is one point that perhaps we may need a separate deliberation. Maybe how do you do those financial close for large slugs of capital? Because it's not just RECO, it will be even the private sector that will need a lot of funding. And there is also, I think we have to focus on the infrastructure to make it as green as possible, to make sure, because it's easy to get green funding in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waqar Saab. Anybody else? We can wrap up. We covered, I think
the harmonizing and humanizing
we covered, actually in this session, we covered a range of topics, and we covered so much we could have a whole day session on just how the local business community, Pakistani companies, can do in the mining sector. But I thank all the panelists. Thank you very much.